Krishna, welcome to the Migratory Monk channel. Myself, Bhakti Vedanta Swami Gaurapad. In this episode, I shall give you some very important historical information regarding the foundation of Indian capital city Delhi, particularly Old Delhi. The popular belief that the city of Old Delhi was founded by the 5th generation Mughal Emperor Shah Jahan is completely wrong and unwarranted. It has no basis in history. The existence of Old Delhi can be traced back to the era of the Pandavas. The city of Old Delhi, together with the ruins of massive buildings found for miles all around, constituted the famed Indraprastha, the capital city of the Pandavas. During a millennium of Islamic invasions and 600 years of rule in Delhi, the alien junta made persistent and relentless attempts to obliterate from the public mind the Hindu origin of all cities and important buildings, and implant the belief that they were all Muslim creations. The British, who succeeded them as the paramount power in Bharat, out of sheer blissful ignorance of the earlier Machiavellian attempts, perpetuated that myth. As a result of such a 1200 years long manhandling, Bharatiya history is all completely distorted. The origin of the city of Old Delhi is a graphic instance of that colossal distortion. It is therefore that I propose to discuss the plethora of scattered evidences that are still available to prove that the metropolis of Delhi is at least as old as Mahabharata era. By the metropolis of Delhi, I mean not only the city of Old Delhi, but all peripheral ruins currently known as Sri, malpronounced by the public as Siri, Haj Khas, Vijay Mandal, Purana Kila, Shergarh, Dinpanaha, Kilokri, ruins around the Nijamuddin tomb, ruins around the so-called Qutub Minar, Firoz Shah Kotla, the so-called Begumpura Mosque, and many other ruins, nondescript tombs and mosques. Together, they all constitute the magnificent and massive temples, mansions, forts, palaces of the Hindus who founded the glorious of expansive metropolis of Delhi. It is a colossal mistake to believe that 7 or 15 Delhis were founded at different times in different places by different monarchs. Just as the 20th century Delhi has many suburbs forming one big metropolis, similarly the Delhi of the ancient Hindus was a vast sprawling metropolis whose expanse compared with that of the leading cities of our own times like London, New York or Tokyo. In fact, ancient cities like Delhi had to extend over miles and miles because the economy then was mainly agricultural. All the elite possessed large farmsteads. Also, those were times when feudal chiefs, courtiers, noblemen, landlords, fief holders, and army leaders all commanded a retinue, a bodyguard, and a contingent troops. Therefore, there used to be big manor houses which could accommodate large retinues of horses, elephants, palanquins, camels, mules, chariots, guns, and the soldiery. There were furthermore large sarais called dharmasala to accommodate large bodies of troops or other travelers going from one part of the country to the other. The ruins that we see around Delhi consist of all these. Far from having been erected by Muslim invaders or rulers, they were all relentlessly stormed or destroyed by them. This is an instance of how history, as it is taught at present in our school or universities, is not only all distorted but is torn topsy-turvy. That is to say, Muslims who destroyed ancient Hindu mansions, castles, palaces and temples are being held as great builders. This realization should serve to underline the necessity of teaching the real history of Delhi. In the Mahabharata era, big cities were very often signified by the suffix prastha, as in Tilaprastha. We call it in today Tilpat. Paniprastha means Panipat, Yamaprastha, Agra, Indraprastha, Delhi, likewise Brukaprastha. The Purana Kila alias Old Fort is generally admitted as being the oldest building extant and is believed to be associated with the Pandavas. If it is considered that Purana Kila is the oldest building, then by same logic, Purani Delhi is the most ancient part of the metropolis of Delhi. Some people say the British raised a city in the vicinity and called it New Delhi. Precisely because an old Delhi already existed at that time, they consolidated their rule in India in the early 19th century. Though we know that is a misnomer because what we call now Delhi is dotted with ruins of very ancient buildings. That part of the city would not have been called Old Delhi had Shah Jahan raised it, because in that case the city would have been the newest Delhi known to the British before they built their own. It should be clear, therefore, that Old Delhi bears that name because it has been known to every generation as the oldest Delhi, and therefore it is at least as old as the Mahabharata era. The claim that Shah Jahan raised Old Delhi is untenable, also from other consideration, namely Shah Jahan is supposed to have raised a city called Shahjahanabad. If that were true, Old Delhi should not have known to us as Old Delhi but as Shahjahanabad or New Delhi. A name given by Shah Jahan to a newly founded city would not have vanished into thin air just for nothing and got substituted by the name Old Delhi. This also unexpectedly leads us to another distortion, namely that Shah Jahan and his henchmen tried to foist the name Shahjahanabad on the city of Old Delhi, but they obviously failed miserably because the name Old Delhi had apparently taken such deep roots in immemorial Hindu tradition that it refused to be uprooted, even though 600 years of Islamic effort. Incidentally, Shah Jahan was not the first alien Muslim monarch who tried to change the name of the ancient Hindu Delhi. Almost every Muslim monarch tried that before. That is how Sri, misspelled as Siri, is ascribed to Alauddin Khilji, Tughlaqabad to Ghiyasuddin Tughlaq, Qutub Minar area to Qutubuddin, the Hajj Khas area to Firoz Shah Tughlaq, besides, of course, the distant Firoz Shah Kotla also, and the Purana Kila area to Sher Shah. So Humayun, the great grandfather of Shah Jahan, had earlier tried to foist the name Din Panaha on the city of Old Delhi, but that name did not stick, and so Shah Jahan in his own times tried to give it a new Islamic name. Historians have apparently been duped by this naming game into believing that each alien Muslim, even though he ruled for as small a period as 5 years, built grand cities and magnificent mansions, though he was all the time engaged in fighting fierce feuds with his own keen and bloody wars against India's Hindu rulers. Generally, the conquerors, invaders, change names of captured buildings or townships is a tradition common to all people. Did not we change the name of the Viceregal house in New Delhi to Rashtrapati Bhavan? Would it not be then foolish for any future historian to assert that New Delhi's Rashtrapati Bhavan was built by the first president of independent India in the 20th century? This is foolishness. Similarly, the city of Old Delhi existed much before Shah Jahan. Is also proved by the noting of the invader Taimurlan, who swept into Delhi on a whirlwind massacre spree in 1398 AD. That was 2030 years before Shah Jahan came to the throne. Taimurlan mentions Old Delhi in his memoirs, page number 442, 449, volume 3, Eliot and Dowson edition. I am giving you the proof. Just imagine the temerity or the ignorance of those people who assert that Old Delhi was founded by Shah Jahan, when 2030 years before him we find a specific mention of Old Delhi by Shah Jahan's own ancestor. Similarly, other cities in Bharat like Ahmedabad ascribed to Ahmad Shah, Allahabad to Akbar, Firozabad and Hisar to Firoz Shah are all ancient Hindu cities on which alien names and authorship have been foisted. Another very important indication about the Hindu antiquity of Old Delhi is the location of its ancient cremation ground known as Nigambodh Ghat. By traditional Hindu practice, the cremation ground is at one extremity of the township. The Nigambodh Ghat marks the northern extremity of Old Delhi, as may be seen from its massive wall ending just there. This Nigambodh Ghat finds repeated mention in the Hindu epic Mahabharata. The Pandava brothers used to perform the funeral rites of their kith and kin on the Nigambodh Ghat. Correspondingly, at southern extremity of the Old Delhi is Rajghat, alias King's Bank, part of the Jamuna river. The Pandavas ruled Delhi, hence the name Rajghat. अगर मुसलमान शासन किए होते तो बादशाह घाट होता. The Old Delhi should extend exactly from Rajghat to Nigambodh Ghat, which is mentioned in the great epic Mahabharata. It's clear, incontrovertible proof that Old Delhi has been existing since the times of Pandava. It is therefore possible that the Red Fort itself has its origin in the hoary Pandava era. This seems plausible because the Jamuna bank at the rear of the fort gets its name Rajghat from Hindu Rajas who used to climb down to the riverfront for their daily baths and rituals. Whether or not the existing walls of the Red Fort belong to the Pandava era, it seems quite certain that the site of the Red Fort is an ancient Hindu royal seat, even as we call Somnath an ancient Hindu temple, though it was re-erected as many as 7 times. One very unique feature which proves that ancient Hindu township of the Red Fort is the royal Hindu insignia, which may be seen graphically depicted inside the Khas Mahal, alias the king's own apartment. All these days, it has been chauvinistically and fraudulently misrepresented as embodying the Muslim crescent. Reader may therefore once again go to the Red Fort and have a second close hard look and note that it is not a crescent but a pair of swords laid hilt to hilt, curving upwards. These sword blades signify royal might, which is the foundation of all administration, Hindu administration. At the center of the panel, just above the hilts, is the sacred Hindu Kalash water pot. So this represents the sacred founding of the realm. On it is placed a lotus god to represent the wealth, prosperity and peace. From that bot just out a shaft balancing a pair of scales to signify that the main function of the administration is to ensure justice for all. This panel is further dotted by small representations of the midday sun shining in all its brilliance, because most Hindu royal dynasties claimed descent from the sun god Suryavanshi, and the sway they held was likened to the midday splendor of the sun, scorching the enemy and warming the citizenry. In the arc above is a bigger central representation of the brilliantly glided royal sun. That sun shines on the whole panel from the canopy-like arc sheltering the panel. At the two sword points are two conch shells representing Lord Vishnu, because the king is believed to be an incarnation of Lord Vishnu, the protector and nourisher. Two other large conch shells may also be seen at the left and right corners of the base of the panel. These are all pure Hindu symbols. We should remember it. Another important thing is whether this royal insignia belongs to the Pandavas or King Anangapal of the 11th century AD or to some other Hindu monarchs may be investigated. But it is certainly not Islamic or of any latter-day Hindu. It may be that this royal Hindu insignia is a very rare and ancient Hindu sign which, though seen by millions for several centuries, has been lately mistaken to be of Islamic origin. This insignia should start a hunt for similar other ancient Hindu insignia in other buildings and impel scholars to see whether it could belong to the Pandavas or not. The Red Fort apartments are identical in plan with royal apartments described in ancient Sanskrit literatures like Harsacharita and Banabhatta's Kadambari. Has been proved with line drawings and comparative tables in the cultural study of those two Sanskrit classics written by the late Mr. Vasudev Saran Agrawal, a former archaeology official and later a professor of Indology in the Banaras Hindu University. Our research finding that all historical buildings from Kashmir to Kanyakumari are of pre-Muslim Hindu construction and had not been widely known when Mr. V.S. Agrawal died. And therefore, he probably carried the mistaken impression, like all others, that the Taj Mahal, the Lal Killa and such other buildings were commissioned by the alien medieval Muslim royalty reigning in Bharat. Even then, he could not resist noting that the apartments in the Red Fort in Delhi were identical with those described in the Sanskrit literatures as belonging to ancient Hindu kings. He has devoted several pages and a number of diagrams to explaining this finding of his. Even lay visitors may visually satisfy themselves about the Hindu characteristics of the buildings inside the Red Fort by walking or driving along the riverside of the rampart and noticing the buildings. Their reef domes, the curving roofs, pegs sticking out from those roofs, octagonal kishokes and conical arcs leading to the erstwhile riverfront will irresistibly bring to his mind the vision of river ghats at places of Hindu pilgrimage, bristling with similar Hindu buildings. A couple of furlongs from Rajghat is an ancient Hindu citadel at present, euphemistically called Kotla Firozshah. Because of that grafted Islamic name, tourist and archaeological literature has tended to represent that ruined building as having been built by the Muslim Sultan Firoz Shah Tughlaq. Firoz Shah himself has never claimed that he built anything, nor has he left us any record of having commissioned any building. His was frustrated reign of two crushing defeats in Bengal and two in Sindh. Only a stooge called Shams-e-Siraj Afif, 2 generations younger than Firoz Shah, makes some vague building claims in favor of his grandfather's benefactor. And in an effort to cover up the fact that Firoz Shah spent a part of his life in a ruinous Hindu citadel sporting the towering Asokan pillar, that chronicler has recorded a canard that Firoz Shah uprooted 2 Asokan pillars from some villages north of Delhi, and having got them transported to Delhi, had one raised on his own citadel and the other on the ridge. Here we must remember a fanatic medieval Muslim monarch would never raise a pillar with heathen Hindu inscriptions over his citadel. He would rather have it hauled down. But Firoz Shah could not do that, for fear that the Asokan pillar, if uprooted, would leave a gaping hole in the topmost story and would crush all the nether storage if it fell with a thud. Therefore, Firoz Shah Tughlaq had to make do with a hated Hindu pillar towering over the citadel. He chose as his residence in a terrain dotted with similar ruins, the handiwork of alien Islamic invaders preceding him. Court stooges had then to somehow explain away Firoz Shah choosing to live in a castle bearing an ancient Hindu pillar. Those stooges therefore planted the canard in history that Firoz Shah himself, out of sheer fancy, had an Asokan pillar hauled down from far away to be raised above his palace in Delhi. What we conclude from the analysis is that the castle known as Firoz Shah Kotla is Asoka's own palace, because it bears his pillar on its terrace. The ruined state of the castle is also proof of its having been subjected to several Islamic invasions from Muhammad Ghazini in early 11th century onwards. That Asoka's castle should be located within about a mile of Red Fort is further proof that what we call Old Delhi existed from the times of the Mahabharata era and was not founded by Shah Jahan in the 17th century. According to currently accepted chronology, Asoka ruled in the 3rd century BC and the Pandavas lived in the 4th millennium BC. It was but natural for King Asok to raise his citadel just outside the Old Delhi of the Pandavas. Old Delhi is located on the west bank of Jamuna river. This too occurs with ancient Hindu tradition because citizens of Delhi used to go to the Jamuna in the dark hours of early morning for their holy bath and facing east offer oblations to the rising sun standing in the river stream. For citizens who could not go to the proper Jamuna bank because of age, infirmity or sickness, a canal of Jamuna was provided by the Pandavas to course its way through what we call today Chandini Chowk. This ancient highway was then divided into two by the Yamuna canal flowing through its center. On either side were Hindu flower plants, sacred trees like the Tulsi and temple ghats. The present Gauri Shankar temple is one of those. During incessant Muslim raids, the canal got gradually filled up with debris of temples and ghat destroyed by Muslim invaders. It is therefore wrong to assume that Firoz Shah had commissioned that canal. On the other hand, in his time, the canal had been already badly clogged. Around the axis of that canal, extending from the ancient Red Fort to the Shiva temple, currently known as Fatehpuri Mosque, was a network of lanes and by-lanes ensconced by a massive town wall, protecting the residents like a pearl held firmly inside its shell. The city of Old Delhi needs, therefore, to be studied as an excellent example of ancient Hindu town planning. At one end of the highway cum canal of that metropolis of Old Delhi was the Hindu king's palace cum citadel known as the Red Fort alias Lal Kot. At the other end was the Shiva temple, since Shiva was the royal deity of Bharata's ruling class, namely the Kshatriyas. The ending Puri is proof of its ancient Sanskrit name. The Islamic term Fateh signifies a conquered Hindu locality. What is currently believed to be the Fatehpuri Mosque is therefore an ancient Hindu royal mandir temple. This conclusion is further reinforced by a small pedestal still to be seen in the center of the main gate of the so-called mosque. The idol of Lord Ganesh used to be placed in that very pandal at the entrance, as is the Hindu tradition. Let us now proceed inside the so-called Turkman gate. Ambling along the narrow street about 2 or 3 furlongs, one sees a blind alley at the left. A few yards inside, one is confronted right in front by a straight flight of stone steps. Atop is an ancient Hindu building. It is now whitewashed but is still incongruously known as Kali, Black Masjid. Kali means black. Its gateway is of the Hindu lintel post type. It has 2 slender pillars cum basins flanking it. Muslims, at least in Bharat, are owned to whitewash Hindu buildings captured to be used as mosque. Why then does the white mosque bear the name Kali, Black Masjid? The answer is very simple. Kali is the name of a Hindu goddess, the consort of Lord Shiva, who used to be worshipped by Kshatriyas. For example, the Hindu ruling class. When that Kali temple was captured by invading Muslims, it came to be designated as the Kali Masjid. If therefore one scour the winding lanes of old Delhi, one can still come across very ancient Hindu edifices inside its unsuspected recesses. There are few specimens of Hindu architecture of the Mahabharata era, though currently, unfortunately, they are being designated as mosques and tombs. Incidentally, even those who hang around it as fakirs are mostly descendants of Hindu converts attached to those siege temples as priests or other attendants. Let us now come out of that alley and proceed further down the narrow winding street with our back turned on the Turkmen gate. About a mile inside from the gate, one comes across a spacious roofless room of massive walls where Sultan Regia and her sister lie buried. Sultan Regia ruled Delhi over 3 centuries before Shah Jahan. As the sisters lie buried in a crowded street of Old Delhi inside a roofless ancient mansion, is it not absurd to believe that Shah Jahan founded Old Delhi? Sultan Regia was ruthlessly killed in the age-old Muslim tradition of royal internecine feuds. Muslim rule came to be established in Delhi only a few decades before her. Since she lies buried in a massive mansion in a crowded locality, it is clear that Old Delhi, with its narrow winding lanes, existed at the inception of Islamic rule at the beginning of the 13th century and is therefore an ancient Hindu city. This little detail completely refutes the thesis that Shah Jahan founded Old Delhi in the 17th century AD. According to a belief current in our own days, incited by the Willie Cunningham, there were 7 cities of Delhi. This is a gross error. Like many ancient Bharatiya townships, Delhi was surrounded by 7 walls. One wall encloses what we call Old Delhi from Delhi to Kashmir Gate. The second wall used to enclose Ashoka's palace, currently called Firoza Kotla. The contour of that wall can be traced from the so-called massive Khuni gateway, Khuni Darwaja, standing at an oblique angle on the highway that passes in front of Ashoka's palace. The third wall encloses the area currently known as Indraprastha Estate Housing. Indraprastha Estate Housing, the Indian Institute of Public Administration, the Accountant General's Office, etc. The fourth wall passed close to Purana Killa, alias the Old Fort. Ruins of that wall with a massive gateway leading to the National Stadium may still be seen standing in all its ancient Hindu glory, bearing Hindu designs in white and red. The fifth wall encloses the ruins that we see around the so-called Nizamuddin tomb. The sixth wall encloses the ruins known as Vijay Mandal, Haj Khas and Begumpuri Mosque. The seventh wall surrounded the areas currently known as Qutub Minar complex, Tughlaqabad and Suryakund. So vast was Delhi, ancient Hindu Bharat's magnificent sprawling metropolis, abounding in mansions and temples and peopled by a wealthy, prosperous, happy citizenry who had evolved the world's most scientific and advanced social political system. In it were places of 1,000 pillars, often referred to in the chronicles of early Muslim reigns. There were also other mansions known as Lal Mahal and Chaushad Khamba. Chaushad Khamba means the one with 64 pillars, portions of which may still be seen near the so-called Nizamuddin tomb. What are believed to be Humayun's and Safdarjung's tombs are also ancient Hindu palaces. Ancient Bharat had almost an unbroken chain of townships and manor houses extending from the north to south. This may be traced even today. As we proceed south, we come across so-called Tughlakabad, Vallabhagad, Chhatrapur, Kosikalan, Dig, Bharatpur, Kushher, Govardhan, Gokul, Mathura, Vrindavan, Kakrauli, Nagarchen, Sikandra, Agra, Kirouli, Kanwa, Fatehpur Sikri in an unbroken continuity. Ancient Delhi boasted of a long chain of magnificent river ghats from Nigambodh to Rajghat. But all these townships and river ghats and royal mansions and temples were reduced to rubble and ruins or were stamped out of existence during a millennium of alien invasions and raids from Muhammad bin Qasim to Bahadur Shah Jafar. The notion that Delhi is a group of Muslim townships must therefore be abandoned. Instead, it must be realized that ancient Hindu Delhi extended at least from Suryakund to Kashmir Gate, roughly about 16 miles. This vast metropolis was broken up into isolated localities of gaping and desolate ruins because of incessant Islamic raids. But even those ruins can still instruct the discerning in the glory, wealth and power of the ancient Bharat and the town planning and defense system of the Hindus. The belief that only the Purana Killa in Delhi belonged to Pandava era is unfounded. The Kuru royal house consisted 100 Kauravas and 5 Pandava princes, their elders, wives, princes and a large entourage. All these could not have been confined to a Purana Killa alone. Therefore, the entire terrain of Delhi, dotted with ancient ruins, belonged to the Mahabharata era and belonged to Hindus. You should remember it always.